Hi everybody. This is supposed to be an overview of the literary elements. And the literary elements are the basic pieces to any narrative. Now before we get started, I should say you could probably spend an entire unit on any one of these, thinking about what they are, how they develop, what they really mean. This is just supposed to be a really super fast introduction that will be great for students who are getting ready to pick up a narrative, like a core text novel, and kind of go through it with a class for the first time. So why should you care? What's the big deal with all this core text stuff and literary elements? Well, literary elements are the basic pieces of any narrative, and we know that a narrative is a story. It's a story with a beginning, middle, and end, and the narratives have the literary elements. You can't have a narrative without the literary element. It's a narrative is a fancy English teacher way of saying a story. Okay, so when you're thinking about Com Arts class and you're thinking about narratives, your brain should also be thinking about the literary elements. And there are 5 of them. They are character, plot, setting, point of view, and theme. And these 5 terms don't go away. Just because this is a Com Arts class, that doesn't mean that you just forget them. These are words that you can use in college, you can use them in book clubs, you can use them for the rest of your life. And even just as a good reader, when you're reading books later on, you can be thinking about these terms as you're reading. Understanding how the literary elements work together and develop throughout a narrative will enhance your overall comprehension and enjoyment of a text. You know, I talk to a lot of students who say, I read it, but I can't like hold it in my brain. I just don't know what's happening after I've read a couple pages. It all just kind of starts blurring together. One of the ways your brain can start working better when you're reading is to think about what are the literary elements and how are they changing as we go. And we'll be doing some of that in other videos. So this, again, like I said, is just a comprehensive overview, just getting the terms out there, getting you introduced to them, and you should be doing more with them as you go. So the first one, character. So I thought, what better way to think about literary elements than a story that we all know, which is the story of Super Mario Brothers. So these are some of the characters in Super Mario Brothers. A character is a person portrayed in a narrative, can be personified objects or animals. So basically, it's who are the people on the stage, who is in the story. And then we also have some related concepts. When we talk about character, we talk about protagonists and antagonists. Protagonists, the elementary school way of saying it is that protagonists are the good guys and the antagonists are the bad guys. But as you get older, you need to start pushing to think about it in other ways. So, you know, we know that in Mario, the protagonists are obviously Mario and Toad and Luigi. They're the good guys, right? And the antagonist is Bowser. Well, not all stories are that simple. Sometimes the main character isn't such a good guy. So that's why when you say the word protagonist, you should start thinking about the characters at the center of the story. And the antagonist is the characters who are working against the protagonist, stopping the protagonist from meeting a goal. The protagonist is the one who's trying to make something happen, trying to get through a conflict. And we'll talk about conflict in a second. But then the antagonist is working against the protagonist. So whenever you have a bad guy who's a main character, the antagonist is the one working against him. Just because the protagonist isn't a good guy doesn't mean they're an antagonist. Protagonist is a main character, antagonist works against the main character. Okay? Most of the time the protagonist is a good guy, but not all the time. Static characters and dynamic characters. Static characters stay the same throughout the story. Dynamic characters change. So what happens in the story affects the character and changes the character. So Peach, in some versions of Super Mario Brothers, changes as the story goes on. Like, she starts as kind of like this damsel in distress, but then she kind of figures out she can rescue herself in some versions of the game. So she's a dynamic character. She changes as the story goes on. Character traits are words that describe the personality, the inside of the character. So you can say that Mario is brave, he's determined, he's very courageous, he's strong-willed. These are all words that could describe Mario. Luigi, you could say, is a little more cowardly. He's a little bit more of a follower. Those are character trait words describing them on the inside. All right, plot. Plot is just basically a super easy way of saying it is the stuff that happens in a story. It's a sequence of events in a narrative where each event causes the next event. So in a story, one thing happens and that leads to something else happening, and that leads to something else happening, and leads to something else happening, and it works its way up the plot pyramid. I'm going to show you the plot pyramid here in just a second. Plot is driven by conflict. Things don't happen in stories without conflict. So there are a variety of different types of conflict. Again, this is just an overview, so we're not going to dive too deeply in them, but if you want to pause the slide and look at those types, you can. But these are the basic types of conflict that you will see in stories that drive plot. Now, I know there are different ways that you can categorize these and different definitions, but these are some of the most basic. Here's the plot pyramid. Exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution. You've probably been seeing these since elementary school. Do you know which one is the longest in most stories? If you said rising action, you are correct. So the gradually increasing conflicts, the gradual, cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. The big ending, the climax, happens toward the end. It's like any video game, right? Like in Super Mario Brothers, you don't finally face Bowser until the end. You don't make it to Koopa Castle until the very end, because it wouldn't make sense to do that in the beginning of the game. Then why are you fighting the whole game? And that's exactly like most novels. You work your way up to the end. Okay. All right. The setting is where and when the narrative takes place. In Super Mario Brothers, it is the Mushroom Kingdom. And a related concept is tone. So how the tone is the way that a story makes you feel, and the way that an author will describe the setting often sets the tone. But that's some pretty deep stuff, so we're going to hold off on that for right now. Point of view, that is the angle from which a story is told. There are a variety of points of view. We've got first person, second person limited, and third person omniscient. This can get tricky for some students, so there will be another video just about that. Theme is the lesson or message embedded in a narrative and must be a complete sentence. So the theme is what the story is trying to teach you. Even if you don't agree with it, that doesn't mean that's what the author, or in this case, game developer, is trying to make you believe. So in Super Mario Brothers, we know that some of the themes are never give up, never surrender, always try your best, Mario keeps going no matter what. You don't want to just say one word. So don't say a theme in Mario Brothers is bravery. Okay, well, what about bravery? Like, is bravery a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Like, I've read texts where the theme is bravery doesn't get you anywhere. In fact, it just gets you in trouble, right? That's kind of a Katniss theme, if you think about it. So you need to make it a full sentence. Like in Mario Brothers, the theme is you should never give up. You should always be brave. So make it a complete sentence. Now, symbols, that's where we're getting a little bit deeper, where there are ideas that are given symbols to help drive the theme, and that's getting, again, pretty deep, so we'll look at that stuff later. All right, here's a slide of notes. Again, this is supposed to be super basic, so you can go ahead and pause it and write these down to get the basic definitions down of the literary elements. And we'll go ahead and end it here. If there is going to be a skill check, you'll have to do that on your own. And like we said, the skill check should be completed on your own. You can go ahead and pause the slide and answer these 5 questions. Make sure you use a complete sentence. As always, ask me if you have any questions.